Causes, the PKI and Security podcast where a pair of industry veterans talk about all matters digital certificates in PKI. I'm Tim Callan, Chief Experience Officer at Sectigo, and I'm here with Jason Soroko, SVP of Product at Sectigo. How are you doing today, Jason?
Doing great, Tim. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we're doing, tis the season, and we are doing end-of-year look-back episodes, which we do. Although this one almost is a look-forward episode, isn't it? What we want to talk about is crypto agility for 2023. In other words, crypto agility itself isn't really a new term. We'll probably redefine it here. That's an idea that's been around for a while. But how has the crypto agility landscape changed? And what are the ways that a modern approach to crypto agility might be different to what we were doing even just a couple years ago? Does that sound fair?
Sounds great.
All right, so crypto agility for 2023. So first of all, let's define crypto agility. Jason, what's your crisp definition of crypto agility?
Crypto agility, Tim, I think what we're going to find out in this podcast is that it's meaning several different things, but
Okay.
maybe the crispest way to talk about it is your ability to move between states with your crypto algorithms, with your crypto infrastructure, your readiness to swap out various kinds of primitives. It's the ability to move between even infrastructure that you're not hosting yourself. It's a number of things, Tim, and I think that's part of what is expanding in 2023 is crypto agility is meaning a lot of things to a lot of people. I think it's all valid. We just want to bring it all together in this podcast.
Yeah, if you kind of if you break down the word, right, it's actually a rather self-explanatory term, right? It means being able to adjust your cryptography really as needed, as frequently and as quickly and as comprehensively as needed to keep it current and secure and interoperable and meaningful in our world. And, it used to be that cryptography was very slow moving, right? People would implement primitives and use them for decades, right? Literally. And things were hard coded and you couldn't get around it. And, there were stuff that's going to last as long as the hardware lived or as long as the software lived. And that's how it was. And it was felt to be okay. But nobody feels like that's okay anymore. And I think part of what we're seeing and what we're going to touch on today is the areas in which this need to be able to change out your cryptography as frequently as you want and as quickly as you need to are expanding, right? Into new things we hadn't previously really considered, right?
No, you're absolutely right, Tim. Including this is a great podcast because quite often you and I come up with topics, Tim. Quite often you're bringing us the news from the public trust world.
Mm-hmm.
I go into the idiosyncrasies of the private trust world, and quite often never the twain shall meet. This is where it meets hardcore right in the middle.
Absolutely,
because it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Crypto agility is important for all of us, public and private, and I think we should just get right into what some of these new categories of where crypto agility really touches hard.
Yeah, give me 30 seconds to sort of frame what the old categories might have been. The old categories were things like I need to update my hashing algorithm, right? SHA-1's not secure anymore. Now I want to move on to, a later version. And so that's sort of what we all think of, right? And part of that, of course, is swapping out the mechanisms like certificates that cause this cryptography to occur, right? So it's not just get rid of your SHA-1, but it's also, get new certs that are enabling the right hashing algorithm. So things like that. So let's use that as the baseline now, but now we're going to reach beyond that to other areas where the need for agility is manifesting itself. And so let's just start. I'll just throw one out at you, Jason. The ability to be CA independent, public CA independent.
Sure. Imagine, I don't know too many large industries, large enterprises that are out there that don't have different kinds of divisions that aren't using different CA vendors certificates. And of course, Tim, we've had previous podcasts about the idea of shadow IT and the problems associated when you don't have a full visibility to your certificates. And to me, that ability to consolidate or move between CA vendors, very important. I mean, a lot of people have always thought about, well, geez, the main reason I want CA independence is just in case there's some sort of a distrust event. Right. You know, we've seen that before with Symantec.
We just saw TrustCore get distrusted very recently.
That's right. And so if you're locked into one of those vendors, it would be painful for you then have to go through your infrastructure and do the manual swapping. It'd be a lot better to have full visibility to all your certificates and then be able to say, hey, these certificates here with this particular vendor, I want to move over. But it's not just distrust events, Tim. It's even things such as I said, you might want to have Let's Encrypt, you know, for some of your experimental websites and, you know, a Sectigo certificate for your main website. And then perhaps there's even other certificates that you want to track that are being used on your behalf by your CDNs. And the list goes on and on and on. But why you might use multiple CA vendors and being able to have visibility to it, the ability to then swap them if necessary. That's part of crypto agility going into, you know, the end of this year and you know, into next.
Yeah, for sure. And having also, and I know you touched on this, but also being able to have them coexist as a blend, right? Yeah. Let the old certs expire out and replace them with new certs as that goes, or just be able to maintain them in two different places. You know, second sourcing is considered to be a fundamental practice in so many areas of you know, wherever there's a supply chain. And a lot of people would like to be able to second source certificates by way of example. And so, yeah, that for sure is definitely raising in visibility and importance, and people are paying attention to it in a way that they weren't, I'd say, quite recently. So then, all right, next one on the list. How about agility with regard to cryptography and public cloud?
Sure. It's almost a special case of the first one in a way, Tim, because you might have public cloud services that are handling your compute in Amazon AWS and in Google and in Azure. And you might be using some of their certificate management services, both for public and private. And what happens if your CIO comes up to you and says, you know what, vendor X just gave us a better deal. We're moving everything to that.
That's right. Moving it all.
Moving it all.
You still got to have cryptography. It's got to work. Got to have certs. It's got to work.
Well, I can tell you right now that the experience of swapping cryptography in general of public clouds is a fairly... Your response to your CIO is going to be, well, that's all going to be a lot of work, right? And it is going to be a lot of work. Well, what happens if you're running through an intermediary? What happens if you're using good certificate lifecycle management that is actually integrated into those public clouds and essentially acts like an abstraction layer between them?
Right. That
allows you to then say to that CIO, got it, no problem at all. It'll be tracked through our governance program. All the changes we need to make will be fair, you know, clean and secure, and you'll be able to give a good answer. And I think, Tim, that's just going to become that much more common.
Yeah.
As public clouds become the operating system de facto standard for all of us, much more even than, you know, our traditional desktop or server operating systems. Cloud operating systems are, and your lock-in to those cloud vendors shouldn't stop you from taking advantage from being able to move around in the cloud.
And treat them all the same way, right? You talked about governance. Your governance rules should be a single set of governance policies. Even if your policies will be subtly different for public cloud certs than for on-premise certs, which is a possibility, you'd still want them all to be considered as a single set of policies, right? You'd want to capture them all in one place. You'd want to report them all together. You'd want to be able to apply them equally and with equal ease and alacrity. And all of that is part of having a true cloud-independent crypto agile system.
It's so important, Tim. Every one of the vendors makes you play a different kind of a game, and that's fine. They do that in order to lock you into them. Mm-hmm. In fact, the cryptographic services that they all offer are very, very bent towards keeping you within their system. And I can tell you, Oh, if you're any one of those big public cloud vendors, you're nodding your head and it's hard to disagree, but they do that for competitive reasons. And so for you as the user, you want to be free of that, and you want to be able to take advantage of that ability to be independent of those specific CAs, whether they're public or private.
Yeah, especially since flexibility and what I want to say, ease of repatriation is so important for users of public cloud, right? One of the things that you see a lot when you look at the research is that this idea that I am not locked in is very compelling, and it's part of how purchases are made, and it's part of why people stay with vendors that they stay with, is because they know they can make these moves. And yeah, I get why the public cloud providers want to lock you in, but the IT professionals that I talk to don't want to be locked in. So that definitely becomes one of the important governing factors in all of this.
So when you are speaking to vendors for certificate lifecycle management, make sure you're asking hard questions about integrations into those public clouds, Tim. It's becoming important. And in 2023, I can tell you, if you haven't done it already, it's going to be a theme of your job in 2023.
And the other way, when you're shopping for a public cloud, find out how they are providing interoperability with your CLM, right? You can ask them too, right? Because they've got to win your business too.
How easy is it to bring your own key, right? In various services, including desktop, virtual desktops, etc. They all have something around that, but some of them are a lot easier to use than others. So check it out.
Okay, good. Number 3 that I can think of course, is that we are moving into the era where instead of it being a future thing that some mathematicians were working on that we're all watching with interest, we're moving to the area where we're really going to have to start actually implementing post-quantum crypto. So I would say PQC agility is definitely on the list starting in 2023.
Oh, it's huge. And in fact, Tim, this is where I've got to bring it up, but the idea of hybrid certificates being the bridge between the systems that you have today and the systems that you're going to have sometime in the future, right? Don't even know when we're completely away from RSA and ECC. We're going to be in an RSA and ECC world for years to come. And that ability to utilize hybrid certificates will help to bridge that world and give us the agility to move into quantum readiness.
And Jay, what's the 30-second? We did a whole episode on hybrid certificates, so you could go listen to that to get the full story, and I highly recommend that. I don't have the number in front of me, but Jason, what's the 30-second capsule summary of what hybrid certificates offer?
Hybrid certificates, think of TLS certificates, the good old X509 standard, except with an extra field. And that field is helping to define whether the certificate is utilizing RSA or ECC basically on the outside of the certificate, and then essentially within the inside of the certificate. Almost think of it like a keep within a castle. The encoded message that's being protected is being protected by a post-quantum algorithm. It could be one of your choice, but that ability to have both the old world algorithms and new world algorithms within the same certificate, Tim, that's what it is.
And I just looked it up. It's our episode 118. So if you want to hear more about hybrid certs, go to Root Causes 118, and we explain the whole concept. So hybrid certificates, and those are maybe not essential for everything, but for many use cases, they're absolutely essential. And I would guess that probably for the vast majority of systems, implementations, applications, and use cases, and organizations, enterprises, they really are going to be essential.
They really are. And I do have to say, Tim, the time to get your hands dirty with them is now.
Yeah.
And in fact, we've seen news announcements out of Sectigo about the fact that, we have toolkits available for you to check out. We've now had news releases from vendors such as Cloudflare, big CDN. They're already using hybrid certificates to be able to utilize draft versions of post-quantum algorithms within some of their certificates for CDN. And also, Tim, great news out of Isara, a partner of ours. They are open sourcing the idea of hybrid certificates. And in fact, we're going to cover that in a separate podcast just because it's such a cool thing.
Yeah. All right, so here's my last one, and this one's a little, I'd say it still qualifies, and you'll see why, is 2022 we saw some important developments in terms of making PKI-based login and validation available to ordinary consumers using their devices across just a broad array of sites that they might attach themselves to. And this is using the WebAuthn protocol in FIDO 2, and it has various names on the various platforms, but we've seen support in major desktop and mobile device platforms. And one of the advantages of this, of course, is this puts it all into the system that itself is highly agile. So as we need to change our PKI for our logins, all you really need to do is get a relatively small number of auto-updating operating systems to get onto the current cryptography. Like if something came along tomorrow and we had to change fundamentally how we were approaching this stuff, it would be so much easier of a lift than it had been prior to WebAuthn, right? Because you get Apple and Microsoft and Android to push an update, and they're all into auto-updating systems. You get an update that's going to be necessary anyway, occurring on the back-end systems if that cryptography is really, suddenly deprecated or not worthy of trust. And bang, a massive ecosystem overnight has moved to a new set of cryptographic standards. And, prior to widespread use of something like WebAuthn, I can't even imagine how that kind of event would be possible.
Right. Changing the clients, right? The cryptographic algorithms that are run inside of clients, those clients would have to update it themselves, and that's done in a piecemeal nature, different operating systems, what do you do in the cloud, et cetera, et cetera. Now that it's going to be fundamentally a first-class citizen directly within the main desktop and even mobile operating systems, well, those guys have solved a lot of those problems and thankfully have probably going to make us a lot more agile in 2023 and beyond.
Yeah, now hopefully that particular event doesn't come up, but we have to be prepared for those, right? There have been times in the past where deprecations have occurred, and sometimes they've occurred kind of quickly. And so being able to keep everything current, if need be, very rapidly is absolutely an essential aspect of a secure, going forward, wide-scale PKI-based authentication ecosystem.
As cryptography becomes even more and more ubiquitous, Tim, this had to happen, right? And so, we're getting there. I think this is one of the very first steps to making it one of those first-class citizens in a regular update type of scheme. But I think we still need more down the road, but at least this is a good first start.
I think that's great. Is there anything else for crypto agility for 2023, Jason?
Tim, I just want to finish it off with the idea that a lot of what Tim and I just talked about in this podcast is brought to you by certificate lifecycle management, good old-fashioned discovery, provisioning, and a lot of technologies that are not your grandpa's PKI. And thank goodness for that, because as you are going through your digital transformation in your enterprise, or even just you as a standard citizen trying to log into your various systems, these kinds of crypto agilities are being brought to you by new technology, new thinking, and better ways to think about cryptography and PKI in all the ways that it works. And important year-end topic, and a lot more to talk about this next year.
Excellent. I'm certain we're going to be returning to all of these things next year. So thank you very much, Jason. That's Crypto Agility for 2023. And on the one hand, to some degree, it's the old crypto agility we all know about. But as you see, it's taking some new directions. It's got some new requirements that really are unique to the times right now. And that's how these things go.
Got it, Tim.
So thank you, Jay. This has been Root Causes.